My name is David, and this story is about the moment my life changed. It didn't happen in a dramatic way. There was no storm, no accident, no big explosion. It happened slowly, in small moments, like drops of rain that finally fill a bucket. And the truth is, I didn't even notice it happening at first. I grew up in a small town where everything was simple. People woke up early, went to work, came home, and talked about the same things every day. You probably know places like that. Life is quiet, safe, and predictable. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But for me, it became a trap without walls. I didn't see the trap. I just felt stuck without knowing why. Every morning, I woke up with the same routine. I made coffee, checked my phone, and went to work. I worked as a delivery driver for a local store. It wasn't a bad job, but it also didn't help me grow. I talked to customers, drove around town, and listened to the same old radio songs. I told myself, it's fine. It's normal. Everyone lives like this. But deep inside, I knew something was missing. One day, something unusual happened. I was delivering a package to a house at the edge of town. A small, old house with a big, green door. When I knocked, an old man opened it. He had white hair, bright eyes, and a smile that felt warm immediately. He said, "Ah, you must be David. I've heard about you." I was surprised. "Me? From who?" He laughed softly. "From the world. You just don't realize how much the world sees you." I didn't understand, but I nodded politely and gave him the package. He looked at it and said, "Young man, do you have a minute?" Normally I would say no. I had other deliveries. But something about him felt special. So I said yes. He invited me inside. The house was full of books, plants, and strange little objects that looked like they had histories of their own. He walked to a shelf and picked up a small wooden box. He didn't open it. He just held it in his hand. "Do you know why people feel stuck?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I feel that way sometimes." He nodded, like he already knew. People feel stuck because they think with only half of their mind. They see life in one direction. But life is big, and thinking must be big too. I didn't know what he meant, but I listened carefully. He said, "When you think only in one straight line, you live only one small life. But when you learn to think different, the world opens. You see choices you never knew existed." It sounded nice, but also confusing. I said, "How do I learn to think different?" He smiled slowly and handed me the wooden box. "Start with curiosity." I opened the box. Inside was nothing. I looked at him, confused. "Is this a joke?" "No," he said. "Curiosity is not a thing. It is a space where new ideas can enter. Keep this empty box. Look at it every day. Let it remind you to leave space in your mind for new ways of thinking." Honestly, I thought he was a little strange, but something about the box felt meaningful. I thanked him and left. That night, I put the box on my desk. It looked simple, ordinary, but it made me think. Why give me an empty box? Why talk in riddles? Why did I even care? Over the next few days, I started noticing little things. People around me complained about the same problems, but never changed anything. My coworkers repeated the same jokes. My routine felt even more boring. And every time I passed my desk, my eyes went to that empty box. One morning, while drinking coffee, I stared at the box and said out loud, "What am I missing?" Something clicked inside me. Not a loud click, more like a quiet realization. I had never questioned my life. I just accepted everything as it was. I never asked, "Can I do something else? Can I grow? Can I learn more?" I realized the old man was right. My thinking was small. I had lived inside a mental box for years, and the only reason I didn't escape was because I never tried. That day, I decided to change one small thing. Just one. Instead of going straight home after work, I went to the public library. I hadn't been there since I was a kid. Inside, the smell of old books felt comforting. I walked between the shelves without knowing what I was looking for. Then I saw a book about creativity. Its title was Think Different, The Art of New Ideas. I smiled. Maybe life was sending me a message. I borrowed the book and started reading that night. The more I read, the more I understood. I had never used my imagination. I had never challenged my own beliefs. I thought life was one path, not many. The next week, I returned to the old man's house to deliver another package. He smiled wide when he saw me. "So," he said, "have you started thinking different?" I held up the book. "I'm trying." He nodded. "Good. Trying is the first door." We talked for a while. He told me stories of people who changed their lives because they allowed new ideas to enter their minds. Artists, scientists, travelers, inventors, even ordinary people who simply decided to ask new questions. For the first time in my life, I felt a spark inside me. A spark of curiosity. A spark of possibility. And that spark became the beginning of everything that followed. During the next month, my life didn't transform in big, dramatic ways. I didn't quit my job, I didn't travel the world, and I didn't suddenly become a genius. But something much more important began to change. My mind started to wake up. Every evening when I came home, I spent at least 15 minutes reading the book I borrowed. It wasn't complicated. It explained simple ideas. How creativity grows, how the brain forms habits, and how we can break those habits by asking new questions. I began practicing one small exercise every morning. When I woke up, before checking my phone or making coffee, I looked at the empty wooden box on my desk and asked myself one question. What new thing can I notice today? Just that. A simple question, but it opened something inside me. At work, I started noticing details I had never paid attention to. The way customers greeted me, the way sunlight hit the windows in the shop, the way my coworkers complained about the same things every week. I realized something strange. People didn't actually hate their lives. They just never questioned them. They never asked, is there another way? They had stopped being curious. And maybe I had been the same. One afternoon, when business was slow, I told my coworker Sam, I think I want to learn something new. He laughed and said, learn what? You already know everything you need for this job. But that was exactly the problem. I didn't want to know only what was needed for the job. I wanted to know more about myself, the world, ideas, creativity, anything. After work, I visited the old man again. His name, I learned, was Mr. Ellis. When I told him about my little morning exercise, he smiled with pride. Awareness, he said, is the doorway to new thinking. We sat at his small kitchen table, drinking tea with honey. The room smelled like old books and warm bread. He asked me, have you tried doing something new? Not really, I admitted. I just noticed things. That's good, he said. But noticing without doing is like seeing a road and never walking on it. His words stayed in my mind. So the next day, I decided to take a tiny action. Nothing big. Instead of eating lunch alone in my car, I walked to the park nearby. I sat under a tree, listened to the birds, and breathed deeply. It felt peaceful. It felt like my brain finally had space to stretch. From that day on, I made small changes. I listened to podcasts about ideas. I watched videos that taught me new skills. I wrote little notes in a notebook. Thoughts, questions, anything that came to mind. One evening, a simple but powerful question appeared in my notebook. What if my future is bigger than my town? I stared at that question for a long time. I didn't have the answer yet, but even asking it felt exciting. A week later, something surprising happened. My boss asked me to help with a new inventory system for the store. It was nothing special, just a digital checklist. But instead of rushing through it like usual, I decided to treat it like an experiment. I tried different ways to organize the list. I looked for patterns. I suggested a small improvement. My boss raised an eyebrow and said, "Since when do you care about this stuff?" I almost said, "I don't know." But then I realized, I did care. I cared because my thinking had changed. I cared because I was finally awake. That evening, I ran to Mr. Ellis's house, excited like a kid. I told him everything. He listened quietly, then said something I'll never forget. You have discovered the first rule of thinking different. Small changes lead to big directions. We talked until the sky became dark. I told him I wanted more. I wanted to build a new future for myself, but I didn't know how yet. He nodded slowly. That is exactly where part 3 of your life begins. The next weeks felt like the start of a new life. Not because everything around me changed, but because I changed. My mind felt clearer, more open, and more brave. I wasn't scared of new ideas anymore. I was curious. One evening, after finishing work, I walked to Mr. Ellis's house for what I didn't know would be our last long conversation. He opened the door with his usual warm smile. "So," he said, "you're ready for the next step." "I hope I am," I answered. We sat at his small wooden table, and he placed the empty box between us. "Do you know why I gave you this?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "To remind me to be curious?" "That's part of it," he said, "but not all. The box is empty because your future is not written yet. You can fill it with anything you choose." Most people never choose. They repeat the same days, the same thoughts, the same life, until their time is gone. His words hit me deeply. He continued, "Thinking different is only the beginning. Now you must act different." I felt nervous. But what should I do? He smiled. "Something that scares you a little and grows you a lot." That night, I went home with his words echoing in my head. I sat at my desk, looked at the empty box, and asked myself the question that would change everything. What have I always wanted to try but never dared to do? The answer came slowly but clearly. I wanted to create something. Maybe videos. Maybe stories. Maybe art. I didn't know exactly what, but I knew I wanted to make something that came from my mind. So I made a decision. Every day, I would create one small thing. A drawing, a paragraph, a short idea, a simple video clip, anything. It didn't matter if it was good. It just had to be real. The first week was hard. My ideas felt clumsy. My videos looked silly. My writing felt boring. But I kept going. And something amazing happened. I started to improve. I started to enjoy it. I started to feel alive. One afternoon, I visited Mr. Ellis to show him one of my videos. But his neighbor told me he had traveled to stay with family for a long time. I didn't even get to say goodbye. At first, I felt sad. But then I smiled. Because he had already given me everything I needed. That evening, I placed the empty box on a higher shelf in my room. Not to forget it, but to honor it. It wasn't a lesson anymore. It was a symbol of who I had become. Today, as I tell you this story, I'm still learning, still creating, still thinking different. My life didn't magically turn perfect, but it became mine, not automatic, not small, not trapped. All because one day, an old man handed me an empty box and taught me a simple truth. When your mind opens, your world opens. And now, every time I feel stuck, I return to that moment. And I choose to think different again. If you enjoyed this story and it helped you think a little different today, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and tell me what new idea you want to explore next. Your support helps me create more stories for English learners just like you.